Hey guys, tonight we're tackling your 3 a.m. existential dread. You're staring at your phone, doom scrolling, wondering why you're awake. Congratulations. Your 10th century Viking ancestors, despite living in a world of constant, brutal violence, were probably sleeping better than you are, in a smoky, windowless hut, next to a large, snoring man named Gunther. This is the story of why, despite their harsh lives, Vikings may have had a more natural and restorative sleep schedule than modern humans, who are civilized, but also wired, anxious, and sleep-deprived. Spoiler alert. The secret to their great sleep wasn't a memory foam mattress. It was a combination of crippling physical exhaustion, no Wi-Fi, and a world lit exclusively by fire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin. You're awake. It's 3:14 a.m. You know this because you're staring at a tiny, glowing rectangle of pure chaos. Your phone screen. You're in your comfortable bed, probably surrounded by high thread count sheets and a mattress you spent too much money on. You have central heating. You have double glazed windows. You are, by any objective historical standard, living in a paradise of physical comfort. And your brain is on fire. Why? Because that glowing screen, that portal to everything, is currently blazing blue light directly into your retinas. This light is screaming a very specific, very ancient message to your primitive lizard brain. It's high noon. The sun is directly overhead. Wake up. Panic. A saber-toothed tiger might be nearby. Your brain, bless its stupid, outdated heart, dutifully obeys. It stops producing the sleepy chemicals and instead floods your system with cortisol. It thinks it's time to hunt a mammoth, not drift off to dreamland. And what are you doing with this chemically induced high noon anxiety? You're not hunting, you're doom scrolling. You scroll through Instagram, a curated feed designed to make you feel inadequate. You're seeing people you hate having fun on a beach you can't afford. You look at your high school rival's perfect kitchen, which is cleaner than your life will ever be. You feel a familiar, dull throb of jealousy and despair. Bored with that, you flip over to your email. Just a quick check. You check a work email that came in at 10 p.m. A new project. A deadline has been moved up. Your heart does a little tap dance of panic. It pounds against your ribs. Congratulations. You're now thinking about spreadsheets. You're not relaxing. You're not winding down. You're lying perfectly still in the dark, in your scientifically perfected comfort zone, mainlining digital anxiety straight into your eyeballs. You are actively, skillfully destroying your own ability to rest. This is your luminous prison, and you wonder why you're always tired. But your phone isn't the only culprit. It's just the ringleader of a much larger conspiracy. The modern world has declared war on darkness, and you're living in the occupied territory. It's a 24/7 assault of artificial light, and you are losing. Just look around your room. Your alarm clock glows a sickly, insistent red. Your laptop charger emits a tiny green LED that refuses to die. Outside, the streetlights beam a murky, depressing orange through your curtains. Your house is full of LEDs. The bathroom light is bright enough to perform emergency surgery, and your smart fridge probably emits a faint, smug glow just to let you know it's judging your life choices. You live in a state of perpetual artificial daylight. And this, my friend, has completely destroyed your body's natural circadian rhythm. Your poor, primitive brain, the same brain your ancestors used, is hopelessly confused. It sees light, so it thinks, daytime, time to be alert, worry about things. Don't get eaten by a wolf. It's 2 a.m., but your brain is convinced it's high noon. It refuses to shut down. This light pollution is just one component of the anxiety engine. Your schedule is a mess. You stay up late, not because you need to guard the village from raiders, but because you're 3 episodes deep in a true crime documentary about a serial killer. You drink caffeine at 4 p.m. just to survive the afternoon, ensuring you'll be vibrating with artificial energy when you're supposed to be winding down. You stress about spreadsheets, about deadlines, about a passive-aggressive email from your boss. Your ancestors had different anxieties, to be sure, very real ones. Will Eric the Red raid us at dawn? Will the harvest fail? And will we all starve? Is that faint rash the plague? The stakes were arguably higher, but here's the crucial difference. At least their anxiety was scheduled by the Sunday. When it got dark, the worrying, mostly, had to stop. They couldn't see the failing crops. They couldn't check their emails about the impending raid. They couldn't stay up all night stressing about spreadsheets because spreadsheets hadn't been invented. And anyway, they only had one expensive, sputtering candle. Your anxiety? It's 24/7. It's electric. It follows you into your bed and stares at you from a glowing screen. Congratulations. You've achieved a level of round-the-clock stress your Viking counterpart, for all his blood feuds and shield-biting, could only dream of. Now, let's turn off all these lights and go somewhere properly dark. Forget your luminous prison. Forget the anxiety engine of your modern life. Congratulations, you're now a Viking in 900 AD. Welcome to your new home, the timber-framed longhouse. This isn't a cozy cottage. It's a giant, single, rectangular room. Think of it as a dark, oversized wooden tube, or maybe a prehistoric university dorm designed by someone who hated privacy. And you share it, not just with your spouse and kids, but with about 40 of your closest relatives, friends, and farmhands. And Uncle Gunter, who definitely snores. But wait, the guest list gets better. You're also sharing this single room with your livestock. That's right, when winter comes, the cows, the goats, and the sheep move in too. It saves them from freezing, and their body heat provides a sort of rustic, methane-powered central heating. Now, let's talk atmosphere. The first thing you notice is the smoke. There's a central fire pit, the hearth, for cooking and warmth. There are no chimneys, just a small hole in the thatched roof. This means the air is an inescapable, choking cloud of wood smoke. All day, all night. Your eyes constantly water. Your lungs are slowly being kippered. You probably have a cough that sounds like a dying seal. It's also dark. The only light is that one smoky fire. Windows? Don't be ridiculous. Windows are just invitations for cold air and divided by or angry neighbors with axes. And it's drafty. The walls are wattle and daub, mud and sticks, or rough timber. The wind whistles through cracks you can't even see. And the smell. Oh, the smell. It's a complex, layered bouquet. You've got the sharp tang of wood smoke. You've got the musty, oily reek of wet wool and unwashed bodies. Bathing is infrequent. You've got the ripe, earthy ammonia of animal dung from your new roommates. And blending it all together is the smell of the stew, a pottage that's been simmering for a week in the central cauldron, with new bits added daily. This isn't a sleep spa. It's a sensory deprivation tank combined with a barn, and it's perfect. So, you're in your new home, the longhouse. It's smoky, it stinks of goat and your Uncle Gunter, and now the sun is going down. What do you do for light? You don't flip a switch. You don't have switches. You don't even have electricity, you savage. Your only light source is the central hearth, that smoky fire pit in the middle of the room. Maybe, if you're feeling particularly extravagant, you light a spluttering animal fat lamp, a wick stuck in a lump of rancid grease, which provides about as much illumination as a dying firefly and smells significantly worse. This isn't the clean, sterile, blue-white light of your modern LEDs or your phone screen, the light that's currently screaming, "Wake up!" at your confused brain back in the 21st century. This is firelight. It's flickering, it's warm, it's red, and red light doesn't mess with your brain. It mimics the sunset. It's a gentle, primitive signal to your body that the day is over. Time to start shutting down. As evening comes, the fire burns down. You stop tossing logs on it. Firewood is precious, and you're not going to waste it just to look at each other. The embers fade from a raw to a dull, red glow, and then the darkness arrives. This isn't your modern darkness, where you can still see the insidious glow of your alarm clock, the charger light, the street light bleeding through your curtains. This is a profound, absolute, pitch-black darkness. The kind of darkness you, a modern person, have probably never experienced. It's the inky, enveloping blackness of the deep ocean, the inside of a sealed tomb. You literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. What do you do in this kind of dark? There is nothing to look at. You can't scroll through Instagram. You can't read a book. You can't check your work emails. You can't binge watch a true crime documentary. The world, and all its visual anxieties, is just off. And your brain, that ancient, simple piece of hardware you've been ignoring, sensing the total absence of light, finally gets the message it's been craving. It gives a sigh of relief and flips the sleep switch. It has no choice but to start producing melatonin, the sleepy time hormone. The off switch is mandatory. You are plunged into a chemically induced state of drowsiness, not because you've practiced good sleep hygiene, but because your world no longer provides any stimulation whatsoever. Congratulations. You've achieved a perfect circadian rhythm, mostly by having no other options. You're not just sleepy because it's dark, though. The pitch-black darkness and the mandatory melatonin production are just one part of the magic sleep formula. The other, more important ingredient, the fact that you are fundamentally, bone-deeply wrecked. Back in your 21st century life, you probably wind down for bed. You might practice sleep hygiene. You might listen to a podcast about murder, read a book, or use a meditation app to calm your anxiety-riddled brain. Congratulations, you have to try to be tired. As a 10th century Viking, you don't have this problem. You don't wind down. You don't need a meditation app. You don't need a weighted blanket. Your weighted blanket is the crippling exhaustion of your entire existence. Let's review your 14-hour workday. You woke at dawn, not because your alarm went off, but because the sun came up, and the rooster, who probably lives inside with you, started screaming. You then spent the day in a state of relentless, back-breaking labor. What did you do? Maybe you were farming, which meant forcing a heavy wooden plow through rocky, unforgiving soil, probably pulled by an ox you share with 3 other families. Maybe you were chopping wood, not just light kindling, but felling actual trees with a heavy axe, splitting the logs, and hauling them back just to fuel the fire that's currently smoking you out. Maybe you were mending fences, weaving wool on a vertical loom, an equally laborious task that destroys your back and shoulders. Or maybe you spent your day rowing a longship across a freezing stretch of sea, which is basically the 10th century version of an assault bike. Only the stakes are drowning, not just cardio. The result. By the time you stumble back into the longhouse and choke down your bowl of pottage, your body is a spent cartridge. Your muscles are screaming. Your back is a single solid knot of pain. You collapse onto your straw pallet from sheer physical exhaustion. You don't wind down, you shut down. Your body doesn't request sleep, it shuts down in self-defense. It's an involuntary system failure, a mercy killing performed by your own physiology. Congratulations. You've achieved perfect sleep readiness, mostly by treating your body like a rented mule all day. You won't be waking up to check your phone. So, you've collapsed from sheer physical exhaustion, your body basically shutting itself down in self-defense. You don't need a meditation app. You are ready for sleep, possibly a light coma. But where do you sleep? Congratulations, you don't have a bedroom. Privacy is a weird futuristic concept, like antibiotics or not smelling faintly of goat. You sleep in the same giant, single, rectangular room where you ate, where you fixed your tools, and where your Uncle Gunter is currently telling a very long story about a fjord. You sleep in the communal sleeping arrangement, which is a polite way of saying a human pile. Along the walls of the longhouse, there's a raised wooden platform or bench. This is your bed. You find your spot, maybe on a pile of straw, and lie down. You might share this cozy wooden slab with your spouse and several children, all crammed together for warmth, like a litter of puppies. Now, you might think, how can anyone sleep like this? There's no privacy. You're right, there is zero privacy. But there's also zero expectation of privacy. You've never had privacy. The concept would just confuse you. Why would you want to sleep alone? What if someone tries to murder you in the night? No, you sleep surrounded by your tribe. It's safe, it's warm, and it is incredibly, deafeningly loud. Back in the 21st century, you probably need total silence, maybe a white noise machine. Here, your white noise machine is the deafening symphony of your Uncle Thorsten's snoring. You're surrounded by the sounds of 40 other people, coughing, everyone has a cough, thanks to the smoke, shifting on the straw, babies crying, quiet whispering. Maybe your neighbor's deciding now is a good time for conjugal relations just 2 feet away from you. And that's just the humans. Don't forget your roommates. On the other side of the room, separated by a low partition, if you're lucky, are the livestock. You can probably hear the goats and cattle shuffling and snorting, maybe a chicken having a bad dream. The air is filled with the gentle, rhythmic sounds of 40 people snoring, 2 cows ruminating, and a baby complaining. It's not peaceful, not in the modern sense, but it's normal. It's the sound of your world at rest, and you're so physically exhausted from your 14-hour workday that you're probably fast asleep before you even have time to register how weird it all is. You're so physically exhausted from your 14-hour day that you barely notice what you're collapsing onto when you finally reach the communal sleeping platform. You just fall. But let's take a moment, in your last waking seconds, to review your sleeping accommodations. What are you sleeping on? Not a pillow-top mattress. Forget memory foam. That's a futuristic fantasy you couldn't even comprehend. You're on a bag, a large sack, probably woven from coarse, scratchy linen, stuffed with straw or hay. This is your mattress. It crackles when you move. It's probably slightly damp from the leaking roof and the general humidity of a room full of 40 breathing people and several large farm animals. And yes, it is almost certainly full of insects. Congratulations. You don't just have roommates, you sleep in a thriving ecosystem. Or maybe, if you're slightly higher up in the longhouse pecking order, you're sleeping on some animal hides. A stiff, smelly deer hide or sheepskin, probably poorly cured, that still vaguely remembers being an animal. It's less a bed and more a respectful way of sleeping on a dead relative of the goat you can hear shuffling across the room. Now, what do you cover yourself with? A comforter? A duvet? Don't be ridiculous. Your blanket is your own heavy, scratchy wool cloak. The exact one you wore all day while you were farming, chopping wood, or possibly getting rained on. You don't have pajamas. You just lie down in your day clothes and pull this magnificent, multi-purpose piece of wool over your body. Let's talk about the sensory experience of this cloak. It is scratchy. This isn't modern processed merino. This is 10th century wool, an abrasive fiber that feels less like a blanket and more like a Brillo pad. And the smell, oh the smell, it smells like damp sheep, its original owner. It smells overwhelmingly of wood smoke, because you've been marinating in a smoke-filled hut for the last 4 hours. And it smells like, well, a rich, pungent aroma of dried sweat, old stew, and maybe a hint of your Uncle Gunter's goat who brushed against you earlier. It's not cozy, it's not comforting, but it is heavy. It's the original weighted blanket, Only this one is also slightly damp and smells like a barn fire. And, crucially, it is warm-ish. That's its only job. It's a tool, not a luxury. It's designed to trap just enough of your body heat to keep you from freezing to death before morning. You pull the scratchy, smelly wool up to your chin, ignore the insect crawling near your ear, and let your crippling exhaustion do the rest. You're huddled on your bag of insect-filled straw, wrapped in your scratchy, smelly wool cloak. You're so exhausted you could probably sleep on a pile of rocks, and yet, you might still be shivering. Welcome to the final feature of your Viking sleep spa, the cold. The longhouse is notoriously drafty. It's basically a wooden wind tunnel with a roof made of grass. There is no insulation. There is no double glazing. Your central heating system is the fire in the middle of the room, which, you'll recall, is mostly designed to fill the space with choking smoke. This fire does an excellent job of warming the smoke-filled rafters 30 feet above your head, but down on the sleeping platforms, you're in the cheap seats. The cold night air seeps in from everywhere. It comes through the wattle and daub walls, which are essentially just woven sticks covered in mud. It whistles through the cracks in the timber frame. It even seems to pour down from the smoke hole in the roof, a reverse chimney effect designed by a cruel and incompetent god. You huddle closer to your snoring spouse and children, less for affection and more for shared body heat. A collective, desperate attempt to generate warmth. You can feel the freezing Scandinavian night air hitting your exposed face. And here is the truly brilliant, accidental genius of your suffering. Modern science, that futuristic witchcraft you can't possibly imagine, shows that cooler temperatures are ideal for promoting deep, restorative sleep. A room temperature of around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius, is often cited as perfect. Your longhouse, in the middle of a Norwegian winter, is probably hovering somewhere just above freezing. Congratulations, you've accidentally optimized your sleep schedule. You've achieved the perfect sleep environment, not through smart thermostats or climate control, but mostly because you're constantly on the verge of hypothermia. You don't just fall asleep. Your body shuts down to conserve energy. You're not just resting. You're entering a state of mild, nightly hibernation, which, as it turns out, is fantastic for your circadian rhythm. So, let's review your situation. You're lying on a bag of damp, insect-filled straw. You're wrapped in a scratchy, smelly wool cloak that serves as your blanket. The longhouse is pitch black, freezing cold, and filled with the symphony of 40 people snoring and livestock shuffling nearby. And you are cripplingly exhausted from a 14-hour day of back-breaking labor. Congratulations, you have accidentally created the perfect, scientifically backed environment for a great night's sleep. Now, what's your nightly schedule? You don't have a bedtime. Bedtime is a modern concept, an arbitrary number you stress about when you're staring at your phone. Your schedule is simple. Sun gone, fire burning low, day over. You just go to sleep when it gets dark. In the dead of winter, this could be 8 p.m., maybe even earlier. Your modern self would just be settling in to binge watch a show. You are settling in for 12 hours of profound, inescapable darkness. You don't toss and turn. You don't worry about that email you forgot to send. Your body, battered by a full day of existing, doesn't just drift off. It crashes. It's a full system shutdown, an emergency power down. You fall into a deep sleep, a borderline coma, for about 3 to 4 hours. This isn't just rest, it's emergency repair. Historians and sleep researchers call this your first sleep. And then, the waking. You wake up, it's midnight, or thereabouts. You have no idea, you don't have a clock. It's just the middle of the pitch black night. Now, let's pause. What does your 21st century brain do when you wake up at 3 a.m.? You panic. Instantly. Your heart pounds. You check your phone for the time. You calculate exactly how many hours of sleep you're losing. You start stressing about how tired you'll be for your 9 a.m. meeting. Your anxiety kicks in, floods your system with cortisol, and congratulations, you're now doomed to stare at the ceiling until dawn. But you're a Viking. You wake up, and you're not panicked. You don't feel a surge of anxiety. This isn't insomnia. This isn't a problem. This is completely normal. This is just the gap, the intermission. You've finished your first sleep. Now, what do you do for the next hour or two in a freezing, dark hut full of snoring relatives? You wake up in the pitch-black darkness, surrounded by the symphony of your snoring relatives. Your 21st century brain would be screaming, "It's 3 a.m. This is a disaster. I'll be useless tomorrow." Congratulations. Your Viking brain just accepts it. This isn't insomnia. This isn't a medical problem. This is just the intermission. Historians believe pre-industrial people like you didn't sleep in one solid 8-hour block. They slept in 2 chunks. This is segmented biphasic sleep. You've just finished your first sleep. Now you're in phase 2 of the night, the 1 to 2 hour waking period. It's not insomnia, it's just the schedule. So, what do you do at 1 a.m. in a pitch-black, freezing longhouse? You certainly can't scroll Instagram. Your phone hasn't been invented. You can't check your work emails. You don't have email. You don't have work. Not in that sense. You are beautifully, profoundly, wonderfully unstimulated. So, what are your options? You might just lie there in your scratchy wool cloak on your bug-filled straw bag and think. You might meditate on the gods. You might worry about the upcoming harvest, or whether Eric the Red is actually planning a raid. You might talk quietly in the dark to your spouse, who is also probably awake, crammed onto the same narrow wooden platform. You gossip, you plan, you complain about your Uncle Gunter's snoring, or you might get up. You can't see a thing, but you know your hovel by heart. You might stumble over to the central hearth and poke the fire, tossing on a new log just to fight back the freezing cold. You might go outside for a bracingly cold trip to relieve yourself, staring up at a sky so full of stars it's terrifying. You might check on the livestock, listening to the cows and goats shuffling in their end of the room. Historians also suggest this quiet, wakeful period was a very popular time for, conjugal relations. You're relaxed, you're awake, and your 40 relatives are mostly unconscious. It's the closest you're ever going to get to privacy. The point is, whatever you do, it's quiet, it's dark. Your brain isn't being flooded with blue light or digital anxiety. You're just existing, calmly, in the middle of the night. Your brain accepts this as a normal part of the process. And after an hour or two of this profoundly boring, low-stimulus wakefulness, you start to feel tired again, naturally, without panic. Your options in the pitch-black, freezing longhouse are, shall we say, limited. You definitely can't scroll Instagram or check your work email. Your main activities fall into 2 categories, practical or quiet. The practical choice. You might notice the freezing cold seeping back into your scratchy wool cloak. Your first move is survival. You might carefully stand up, trying not to step on your sleeping cousin, stumble over to the central hearth and poke the fire back to life. Tossing another log on the embers feels like a major victory against the encroaching ice age. Or, perhaps, nature calls. You might go outside to relieve yourself. This is always a bracingly cold experience. You push open the heavy door, step out into the profound, silent 10th century night. It's so cold your breath freezes instantly. The stars are terrifyingly bright. But you're not out here for stargazing. You finish the task quickly, trying not to step on a sleeping goat, and dive back into the smoky, but fractionally warmer, longhouse. You might also shuffle over to the animal end of the room to check on the livestock, listening for any sounds of distress, navigating purely by the familiar smell of animal dung and heavy breathing. The quiet choice. But maybe you don't want to get up. The cold is terrible, so you might just lie there on your straw pallet. What do? You meditate. Or, more likely, you just worry about the harvest. Did we store enough turnips? Will Eric the Red actually raid us? Will Gunter's snoring ever stop? It's like 3 a.m. anxiety, but with fewer spreadsheets and more existential dread. You might talk quietly with your spouse, who is also probably awake, crammed onto the same narrow wooden platform. You whisper in the dark. You gossip about your annoying neighbors. You complain about the Lord's new tax. It's a moment of rare, quiet intimacy in a world with no privacy. And speaking of intimacy, this was also a very common time for, conjugal relations. Think about it. You're relaxed. You've already had a solid chunk of sleep. It's the only time you're not cripplingly exhausted from work, and you're already in bed. Privacy be damned. Your 38 other relatives are snoring their heads off. This quiet, dark, wakeful hour is probably the best opportunity you're going to get. It's the 10th century Netflix and chill, only without the Netflix. Or the chill, really, because it's freezing. So, you've completed your midnight activities. You've poked the fire. You've whispered to your spouse. You've worried about the harvest. And you've confirmed that your goat is, in fact, still a goat. Congratulations. You've successfully navigated the quiet, low-stimulus wakefulness of the pre-industrial night. And now, after an hour or two of this profoundly boring, pitch-black existence, something natural happens. You naturally start to feel tired again. Your brain, unstimulated by blue light or digital anxiety, decides it's time for the main event. Drifting off again isn't a struggle, it's an inevitability. You lie back down on your straw bag, ignoring the faint rustle of your insect roommates. You pull your smelly, scratchy wool cloak up to your chin, a familiar scent of wood smoke, damp sheep, and you. The freezing cold nips at your nose, but the heavy wool traps just enough of your body heat. The deafening symphony of your Uncle Thorsten's snoring simply fades back into the ambient noise of the longhouse. You close your eyes. You fall into your second sleep. This sleep is deep. It is sound. You sleep soundly for another 3 to 4 hours, your body finishing its repairs, your mind finally quiet. There is no 3 a.m. panic. There is no anxiety about the clock. You just sleep. Waking up isn't the violent, blaring trauma of a modern alarm clock. Waking up is gentle. It's the first light of dawn, a weak, grey, watery light that signals its time. It seeps through the smoke hole in the roof, or the cracks in the wattle and daub walls. The longhouse stirs. The livestock starts shuffling and making noise. Your Uncle Gunter coughs, a sound you know better than your own name. It's time to get up. Time to face the freezing cold floor. Time to restart the cycle of physical exhaustion. You don't feel rested in the 21st century spa weekend sense. You feel functional. Your body has been patched up just enough to survive another 14-hour workday. And in 900 AD, that's pretty much the definition of a great night's sleep. So, you've survived the 10th century night. You woke at dawn, feeling, well, probably not refreshed, but at least functional, ready to restart your cycle of physical exhaustion. How is it that you, a Viking living in a freezing, drafty, smoky hut full of snoring relatives and livestock, managed to sleep so much better than your 21st century self? Let's look at the secret recipe. First, your Viking body clock was perfectly tuned to the natural light divided by dark cycle. When the sun went down, your world shut off. Your only evening light was fire, red light, which doesn't suppress melatonin. Compare this to your modern life. You sleep in a warm, quiet, private room, yet your brain is polluted by blue light from your phone, laptop, and TV, all screaming, "It's daytime," at your confused pineal gland. Second, You had the massive advantage of crippling physical exhaustion. You spent 14 hours a day doing back-breaking labor. Your body demanded sleep. It wasn't optional. Your modern self? You sit in a chair all day, marinating in caffeine and work-related anxiety. Your brain is exhausted, but your body isn't, so you have to try to wind down, often failing. But the biggest advantage, the one we've truly lost, you had no sleep anxiety. You embraced a segmented, biphasic sleep pattern. Waking in the night wasn't a source of stress. It was just normal. It was phase 2 of the night. You woke up in the pitch black, poked the fire, talked quietly with your spouse, maybe had some conjugal relations, and then you just fell back asleep. Now, what happens when your 21st century self wakes up at 3 a.m.? You panic, instantly. You check your phone. You see the time. You start the desperate, spiraling calculation. I only have 4 hours left. I'll be useless for that 9 a.m. meeting. That jolt of pure cortisol and anxiety has now guaranteed you're wide awake until dawn. You've turned a normal, pre-industrial sleep pattern into a catastrophic personal failure. And that's the final, brutal verdict. The irony is almost too perfect. Congratulations. Your Viking ancestor, despite living a harsh, violent, and uncomfortable life, a life of raids, bad hygiene, and sleeping next to a goat, had a healthier, more natural, and less stressful relationship with sleep than you probably ever will. He accepted the darkness and worked with his body. You have conquered nature, optimized comfort, and in the process, completely forgotten how to actually rest. And that's the final, brutal irony. Congratulations on surviving your 10th century sleep experiment. They may have had to worry about shield walls and blood feuds, but at least they weren't stressing about their sleep hygiene. Maybe the secret isn't a new mattress, but a world without Wi-Fi, electricity, or the crushing pressure of 21st century productivity. Something to think about. Or, preferably, just sleep on. And with that final thought, our time in the smoky longhouse is over. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this quiet journey into the past, I hope you'll consider joining me again for another story. But for now, it's time to let the story go. Let the cold drafts, the snoring relatives, and the dim fire fade away. There are no Vikings to worry about, no alarms to set. There is only this moment of peace, and the gentle promise of sleep. Rest well, and good night.